Everyone thought they were the perfect couple. But one hidden camera exposed a betrayal so painful, the whole community froze in shock. What this husband discovered when he pressed play changed everything. Forever. The truth is stranger than fiction. Subscribe now for more stories that will leave you speechless. The morning sun rose over the peaceful streets of Oke-Maja, casting its warm glow on the tiled roofs of the community. Inside a modest two-bedroom house at the edge of the estate, Kunle tied his shoelace and prepared for another long day at work. His wife, Amara, handed him a warm flask of tea with her usual gentle smile. To everyone in the neighborhood, they were the perfect couple, loving, supportive, and inseparable. Kunle trusted her completely, never imagining a world where she could betray him. He often bragged to his colleagues that God blessed him with the most loyal wife. But sometimes, the people we trust the most hold the deepest secrets. Kunle's best friend, Jide, soon became a frequent guest in their home. He visited almost every evening, laughing loudly and sharing stories like a brother. They had grown up together, survived tough times together, and even stood as best men at each other's weddings. Kunle believed that if there was anyone he could trust besides his wife, it was Jide. Amara always welcomed him warmly and served him food like family. At first, Kunle found comfort in their closeness. But slowly, something in their interactions began to look off. It was small, subtle, but unsettling. Some days, Kunle returned home earlier than planned and found Jide already inside, sitting comfortably on the couch. Other times, he walked in and noticed Amara looking flustered, as if caught off guard. He dismissed these thoughts because he believed doubt had no place in a peaceful marriage. Suspicion destroys love, he told himself repeatedly. But deep down, something whispered that he shouldn't ignore the signs. Even so, love made him blind, and trust made him vulnerable. One evening, Kunle overheard whispers coming from the living room as he approached the house. Their tones were low, secretive, and tense. But as soon as he opened the door, silence fell and both of them pretended nothing unusual was happening. Jide laughed loudly as if he had cracked a joke, trying hard to act normal. Amara smiled, but her eyes darted nervously. Kunle stood still for a moment, feeling something break inside him. But once again, he swallowed his doubts and forced a smile. At work the next day, a colleague narrated how a small hidden camera helped him catch a thief stealing from his shop. The story stayed on Kunle's mind all afternoon. He didn't want to believe that anything bad was happening in his marriage, but he also couldn't ignore his instincts anymore. After much internal conflict, he drove to a gadget shop after work. He bought a tiny security camera, disguised as a wall clock. As he held it in his hand, guilt weighed heavily on him. But he told himself it was better to know the truth than to be haunted by uncertainty. Kunle installed the hidden camera late at night when Amara was asleep. He placed it in the living room, facing the couch, where they often sat together. His hands trembled as he tightened the screws, wondering what he was about to discover. "Please let this be my imagination," he whispered. But the fear in his chest refused to calm down. He lay awake 4 hours, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sound of his own heartbeat. Sleep finally came, but heavily. The next morning was normal, or at least it appeared so. Amara cooked breakfast, humming softly as she moved around the kitchen. Jide stopped by shortly after Kunle left for work. Kunle watched the camera on his phone during his lunch break. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the two of them sitting and laughing. But then Jide leaned too close to Amara. She didn't pull back. Kunle's throat tightened painfully, and he paused the video. He tried to resume his work, but his hands kept shaking. His colleagues noticed his distracted behavior, but he brushed them off. The thought of checking the footage again terrified him. What if he discovered something he couldn't unsee? What if the people he trusted most were destroying him behind his back? He struggled through the rest of the day in emotional agony. By closing time, he felt sick to his stomach. When he finally sat inside his car, he opened the footage again from the beginning. This time he watched everything carefully, refusing to skip anything. His heart pounded as he saw Jide slowly place his hand on Amra's lap. Instead of pushing him away, Amara gently held the hand. Kunle gasped sharply and covered his mouth. His world began to tilt. The betrayal stabbed him like a sharp blade. He watched further, and the footage only worsened. They whispered things he wished he could unhear. They laughed in ways that made his chest burn with pain. At one point, Jide kissed her neck, and she didn't resist. Kunle smashed his fist against the steering wheel, shaking with anger and heartbreak. Tears poured down his face against his will. He felt the kind of pain that breaks a man completely. How could they do this to me? Kunle stayed in the car for nearly an hour, battling emotions he didn't know how to handle. He thought of driving straight home and confronting them. But anger could make him do something dangerous. So he wiped his tears and forced himself to calm down. The betrayal was already recorded. The truth was his. He needed a plan that wouldn't destroy him further. His heartbreak slowly turned into cold determination. The next day, Kunle pretended everything was normal. He hugged Amara before work, though it hurt him to even touch her. She smiled innocently, unaware he knew everything. As soon as he got to work, he backed up all the footage on multiple devices. He wasn't going to let the evidence disappear. The betrayal ate at him, but he needed clarity. He needed to understand how long this had been happening. He installed 2 more hidden cameras secretly, one in the hallway and one in the kitchen. If there was more to uncover, he wanted to see everything. His heart was already shattered. Now he wanted the whole truth. That evening, he watched the new footage in silence. He discovered more touching, more flirting, and more secret closeness. His stomach churned. A part of him wanted to scream. Jide and Amara behaved as if they owned the house when Kunle wasn't around. They cooked together, whispered intimately, and laughed like lovers. At one point, Jide hugged her from behind while she stirred soup. The scene nearly drove Kunle insane. He felt sick watching them. Betrayal from one person is painful, but betrayal from 2 people you love breaks the soul. Kunle's nights became sleepless torture. After several days of monitoring, Kunle knew he had seen enough. He printed out screenshots and saved the videos in secure storage. But the emotional damage grew heavier each day. His appetite disappeared. His eyes grew dark from sleeplessness. Even his co-workers noticed the change in him. Finally, he booked a meeting with the community elders, men he trusted and respected. When he arrived at the meeting, he was shaking slightly. He placed the evidence before them without speaking. As the elders watched the footage, their expressions darkened. They were shocked. Betrayal of this kind wasn't just immoral, it was shameful. The elders immediately summoned Jide to the compound square. Amara was also called in, confused and unaware of what awaited her. The entire atmosphere grew heavy as both of them walked in. Kunle sat quietly, his face expressionless. When the footage was played on a laptop for all to see, the silence shattered into gasps. Jide froze in horror. Amra's legs nearly buckled beneath her. Tears streamed down Amra's face as she begged for forgiveness. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Jide tried to defend himself, but no one listened to him. He had betrayed the deepest form of trust. The elders scolded him harshly, calling his actions shameful and wicked. Kunle sat still, numb. Pain had drained all his emotions. Amara crawled toward Kunle, holding his legs tightly as she wept. "Please don't leave me," she cried. But Kunle didn't touch her. He stared at her with empty eyes, as though looking at a stranger. Every memory they shared felt poison now. Every smile she gave him looked like a lie. Every moment suddenly felt tainted. When the elders dismissed the gathering, Kunle walked away without looking back. Amara followed him home, crying non-stop, but he didn't say a single word to her. The silence was more painful than shouting. Kunle slept on the couch that night while she cried on the bed alone. Their once beautiful home now felt cold and broken. Trust had been shattered beyond repair. In the days that followed, Kunle moved slowly like a man carrying a heavy stone on his chest. He barely spoke, ate, or slept. Amara tried everything, cooking his favorite meals, writing letters of apology, kneeling at his feet, but nothing worked. The images and videos haunted his mind relentlessly. Jide avoided the entire community, ashamed of the scandal. Kunle couldn't even bring himself to look at him again. He felt betrayed by two of the closest people in his life. One evening, Kunle sat quietly watching the sunset from his veranda. The colors reflected his turbulent emotions, bright, angry, and fading. Amara approached him slowly, afraid but desperate. She knelt beside him again. "I destroyed everything." "I know," she said weakly. He remained silent. She begged him to talk, but his silence was louder than words. Eventually, Kunle spoke, his voice low and hollow. "I trusted you both," he said. Amara cried harder. He told her he needed time, space, and distance. The house felt suffocating to him now. Amara kept apologizing, but her words felt meaningless. The wound was too deep. The betrayal was too raw. Kunle moved out temporarily and stayed with a cousin across town. He needed air. He needed healing. He needed to understand who he was without the pain clouding him. Meanwhile, the community buzzed with gossip and judgment. Amara became a subject of whispers. Jide disappeared completely from the neighborhood. Shame followed them like shadows. Weeks passed, and Kunle slowly regained strength. He started praying more, seeking peace. His cousin supported him through the emotional storm. Friends visited and encouraged him to heal. Though the pain remained, he learned how to breathe again. His heart began to feel lighter, even if the scars remained. Healing moved slowly but steadily. One afternoon, Amara visited him, looking thinner and broken. She handed him a letter, tears filling her eyes. She promised she would respect whatever decision he made. Kunle accepted the letter silently. That night, he read it. It was filled with deep remorse, painful memories, and desperate apologies. But the truth remained. Love without trust is an empty shell. Kunle prayed deeply that night, not for reconciliation, but for clarity. He needed the strength to choose the path that brought him peace. He knew forgiveness was necessary, not for her, but for himself. The next morning, he returned home to speak with Amara. Her heart raced when she saw him. She hoped for a second chance. Kunle sat across from her, in the living room, the same room where the betrayal had been recorded. He told her calmly that he forgave her, but forgiveness didn't mean returning to the past. He needed a fresh start, free from the shadow of betrayal. Amara broke down, but she knew he was right. Trust, once destroyed, takes years to rebuild, if ever. Kunle packed his belongings quietly, while Amara watched him with trembling lips. It was the most painful moment of her life. He walked out slowly, leaving behind memories, both beautiful and broken. As he stepped outside, the fresh air felt like freedom. He didn't look back. He was finally choosing peace over pain. Time passed, and Kunle rebuilt his life gradually. He focused on work, spirituality, and personal growth. The heartbreak shaped him into a stronger man. He learned to trust himself more. He learned that love without loyalty is dangerous. And most importantly, he learned that sometimes walking away is the bravest form of healing. Amara eventually moved away from the community, unable to bear the shame. She carried regret like a heavy burden, promising herself never to repeat such a mistake. Jide was never seen again in Oke-Maja. His betrayal destroyed his reputation permanently. The community still whispered his name as a warning, and he faded into obscurity. Kunle, however, emerged stronger. He was no longer the naive man who trusted blindly. He became wiser, calmer, and more discerning. People respected him for handling the situation with dignity. He learned to smile again, even though the scars remained. He understood betrayal, but he also understood healing. His heart no longer carried bitterness. Life slowly returned to normal for him, though different from before. He appreciated peace more than ever. He valued sincerity above everything. One cool evening, as he stood watching the sunset again, he finally felt the weight inside him lift. He had survived betrayal and reclaimed his life. A new chapter awaited him, and this time it would be built on truth. Kunle didn't remarry quickly. He took his time. He healed fully before opening his heart again. He wanted to build something pure, without secrets, lies, or shadows. His heart became steady and wise. Memories of the betrayal no longer hurt. They only reminded him of his strength. He had forgiven the past, and he had embraced the future. In the end, the hidden camera that once brought him pain also brought him clarity. It exposed lies, but it also led him to peace. Betrayal shook him, but it didn't break him. He rebuilt from the ruins and emerged even stronger. His story became a quiet lesson to the community. Trust is precious, and once broken, it may never return, but healing is always possible. Kunle learned the ultimate truth. Sometimes, God allows you to see what was happening in the dark, so He can lead you into the light. And with that truth, his life moved forward, wiser, calmer, and free. Kunle later realized that betrayal had taught him lessons comfort never could. He learned to listen to his instincts instead of silencing them with excuses. He understood that trust must be protected, not given blindly. The pain reshaped his priorities and strengthened his boundaries. He no longer tolerated disrespect masked as familiarity. Every scar on his heart became a reminder of growth. What once felt like destruction slowly revealed itself as redirection. He began to walk with quiet confidence. As months turned into a year, Kunle's life took a steadier rhythm. He found joy in simple routines like morning walks and evening prayers. His laughter returned slowly, genuine and unforced. Friends noticed the calmness in his voice and the clarity in his eyes. He spoke less, but when he did, his words carried weight. The past no longer controlled his emotions. He had learned to sit with silence without pain. Peace had finally made a home in him. Sometimes, memories surfaced unexpectedly, like old songs on a distant radio. They no longer wounded him, but reminded him of how far he had come. Kunle accepted that healing does not erase the past, it redefines it. He forgave without forgetting, and remembered without hurting. The betrayal became a chapter, not the whole book. His heart remained open, but guarded with wisdom. Love was still possible, but now it would be built on truth. He trusted the process of time. In quiet moments, Kunle reflected on how close betrayal and blessing can stand. What almost destroyed him ended up saving him from a deeper lie. The exposure brought pain, but it also brought freedom. He no longer lived in a false peace built on deception. His life became honest, even when it was lonely. He learned that solitude is better than fake companionship. The truth, though painful, had set him free, and freedom felt priceless. The community continued to tell his story, but Kunle no longer cared how it was told. He knew his truth, and had made peace with it. He carried no hatred, only lessons. People admired his strength, though they never knew the full weight he carried. He became a silent example of dignity in pain. Without preaching, his life spoke loudly. Betrayal had tried to define him, but he refused. He chose healing instead. As Kunle closed that chapter of his life, he stepped boldly into the future. He knew storms might come again, but he trusted himself to survive them. His heart had been broken, but not defeated. He had learned to value himself beyond companionship. Love would come again in its proper time. Until then, peace was enough. He walked forward without bitterness, without fear, and that, he knew, was true victory.